Hi, welcome to episode 514 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Big Sky, Blue Sky, Blue Sky. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode's show notes and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea where I sell my handspun yarns and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, March 24th. We are almost done with another month. I can hardly believe it. And things are going fairly well here. It is kind of a so-and-so day in the Midwest. It's been going back and forth between 50s and 60s and cold and warm. And I'm a little congested because of it. But otherwise, I think things are good. I had a good weekend. On Saturday, I was super productive and did a bunch of stuff and went a bunch of places. And then yesterday, I was absolutely not. I sat on the couch for most of the day like a bump on a pickle. Although I did get some crafting done. So, I hope that you're doing well and that your week is off to a good start. And let's start with the tea and get into the knits and spins. So I have knitting, spinning, maybe I'll talk a little bit about quilting today, and I think that's it. So today's tea is from Friday Afternoon Tea. They are a lovely tea shop out in the Pacific Northwest, and they do a whole bunch of fandom blends and other things, like if you're into Dungeons and Dragons, and they have some witchy stuff and some other kinds of things. But this is just Irish cream black because it sounded good, although I'm a little puzzled because the label says black tea, marigold, and natural Irish cream flavoring. What is natural Irish cream? I mean, like, I know it's a liquor. I assume it takes its flavoring from some kind of herbs and spices, maybe, but I have no idea what, and so that doesn't mean a lot to me. So, but that is what I am drinking today, and I'm drinking it probably in the same mug I've been using awfully frequently because I love it. It is a ceramic mug. It is by what did I say? Green Ridge Pottery. I got it at Maryland Sheep and Wool when I was there. Let me think about this, 10 and a half years ago, and I know because Roxy was a baby. So yes, I love it. It's my little alpaca mug, and I just absolutely love it. And it stays nice and warm and keeps my hands warm, which is why I've been using it a ton. And so it's really nice. That is good, and it actually does taste a lot like Irish cream. So whatever Irish cream natural flavoring they're using, it is true to form. So let's talk about the knits. I have another finished knit. This weekend I got kind of crazy on hats. I have been knitting some stash busting hats, and this week I decided to switch to a new pattern. This is the June hat, and it was designed by, I think it's designed by Courtney Kelly. I can't remember. I put it in last week's show notes. It is a hat they designed... It was originally knit in Kelburn Woolen's Germantown, and to celebrate the release of Germantown, which was their worsted weight offering, which actually is a really nice worsted weight offering in like a long skein form. It looks very much like the skeins that you would get in big box stores, but it has a really good price point, and it actually, I think it is thicker. It is much thicker than, but it actually is a good substitution for Cascade 220 in terms of like a good workhorse yarn, reasonable price point, nice yardage, good selection of colors. But it is actually quite a bit thicker because Cascade 220 is, it says it's a worsted, but it's really like a light worsted. And this is definitely like a true thicker worsted. Anyway, to celebrate the launch of Kelburn Woolens, which I'm not knitting in this time, they released a year of hats, and it was a year of free hat patterns. They are free on Ravelry. I believe they are also available on their site. I linked to the post on the site talking about the hats. And so they released a year full of hats, and I've loved and have knit quite a few of the hats. But the one I really like right now is called the June hat, and I believe it's knit by Courtney Kelly, but the link will be in the show notes. And it is a 2-color striped hat knit in reverse stockinette and slip stitches, and this is what it looks like. And so what I have done is I had a skein of Patton's wool from, have the bag here. I had a skein of Patton's wool that I know that I bought in Joann's. I had bought it originally to make some felted slippers. And so I had a whole skein left over in the gray colorway, like just a charcoal or heathered gray colorway. And then I used lots of different colors to basically create a gradient beanie. So I had a bunch of tiny little balls, no more than 4 or 5 rows. And I had purple, and then I had kind of a magenta, and then I had, I had 2 different like magentas, and then I had a red, and then I had some orange. And so I knit one of these hats, and technically I think I have enough to knit a whole second hat in the same colors, but I actually switched and started another version of this hat, like another one of these in different colors, which I'll show you in my ongoing projects. So that is the hat finished. It needs to be washed and blocked, and then I'll decide if I'm going to add a pom-pom after I finish probably the second one to see if I have enough. Ooh, apparently I didn't weave in. Apparently I missed a couple of weaving in my ends. So I still need to do that. I think I did most of them. Yeah, I did all of them except I missed 2. So I have 2 more ends to weave in right there. That is the only complaint about doing these gradient projects and using up lots of little bits of skeins, is just that I have lots of ends to weave in every time I change. But I really like the fact that I'm able to get rid of just a few rows of any given color, and it makes me really happy to actually see that like used up. And so I still have more orange, and I have more reds and purples, and I love the way that it kind of feeds into the gradient. The way the striping goes is just really nice. So that is the finished hat for the week. And I guess I might as well show you the next one that I started. The next one that I started, I'm using as my main color. I believe this is some Malabrigo that I used in a sweater for Roxy, and I had about 2/3 of a ball left over. And so I started, and I'm going to do gradients in green. And you probably can't tell. I did like the first color green, and then I went to the second color green, and it's slightly different. It's pretty close, so it's kind of hard to tell. But I have a whole bunch of, let me pull these out. Ooh. I have a whole bunch of greens here, and so I'm just using my greens to go through, and I might actually even have enough of some of these greens to do another hat with green as the main color. Really, it's like, what can I find in my stash so that I can just use up these little bits of yarn? So, and I realized that I have a couple skeins of Barocco Vintage, which is also worsted weight in a couple colorways, and I bought it... To be honest, I think I bought it to make a Harry Potter scarf like ages and ages and ages ago, and I'm not going to do that now. But so I have like 2 skeins of gray and a skein of red and a skein of like a dark yellow, gold. And so I was thinking I might use some of those with some of my scraps and just like start using up scraps and knitting hats. So I'm kind of into this hat. I might knit a million of them. I might knit 6 of them and then be like, nope. I might knit 2 of them and then be like, nope. So yeah. So I'm knitting them per pattern, other than the fact that like in the for the contrast color, I'm just using lots of little bits. They literally knit the hat in black and white. And the cool thing about the hat is if you buy 2 skeins of worsted weight, you can actually knit 2 hats. They say you can knit like one with one as a main color and one as a contrast, and then you could flip them on the second hat. I haven't weighed my skeins yet to find out if like on the Pattons I can get a second full one with the gray as the main color. I'm hoping so, but I'm not sure, because they did say that when they knit them, they knit the 2 in opposite. So like it was a black and white hat, so the first hat had black as the main color and then white as the contrast, and then the second hat had white as the main color and black as the contrast. And so I don't know how the yardage works. I would have to test that first. So don't take my word for it on that yet. But I am just having a ball working through lots of my little, just those little balls of scraps that you just, like I have one in here like this. Like this is not very much. This is maybe 5 rows of a hat, 6 rows of a hat. You know, and then depending on what I have leftovers at the end, and if I decide I want to do a pom-pom, I can use like the last little bits to make a pom-pom, and then all of that is out of my stash. So I'm kind of having a ball. I have a little Rubbermaid tub that has like all of my worsted and DK weight scraps, and so I'm just like working through that tub. And I had decided that March and April were going to be charity months, and whatever I get done, I get done. And so that is what I'm working on, and when I'm done, I will donate these hats. I will likely donate them to Knit the Rainbow, although I have a couple of other causes that I support. So right now I'm just knitting them so that when fall comes and it starts to get chilly again, I can send them off to where they will do the most good. So that is knitting and hats. The second thing that I'm working on is one that I've been working on for quite a few weeks, and I really, so this did not get much work this week, if any, and that is because I had reached a point And I was not sure where I was in the pattern because I was working on knitting without the pattern because I have the pattern memorized. And I was like, I really need to stop and consult the pattern for like where I should be changing tracks, because the pattern actually has several different charts. It has kind of a setup section, and then it has like a couple main sections, and then it has kind of a winding down section. And I was like, I don't know where I am in the pattern and where I am in relation to like where I should start to wind down. So I better not work on it until I have time to sit down and consult the pattern. And when did I do that? I did that yesterday. So this is the Stash Bandit cowl. It is by Samantha Guerin. I have been working on it for way longer than is really necessary because it is a lovely pattern that can be knit in a couple skeins of worsted and DK weight yarn. I am not doing it in worsted and DK weight. I'm really doing it more in fingering and sport weight. But that still should not, and I'm making it a little bit bigger than called for, but at the same time, I still should not, it should not be taking me this long. This is Madeline Tosh Pashmina, which is a lovely merino cashmere silk blend, and it is in the colorway Dust Weaver, which is kind of an almost gray with a lavender wash. And then this is some of my hand spun, which is Marin's Pencils, and it is from Three Waters Farm, and I spun it in what was supposed to be kind of a gradient, but it didn't actually work, and so it's kind of a little bit fractal. I'm moving through the colors, and I really like the way they're coming out in the pattern. Grid Gambit is a bandana cowl pattern. It is knit back and forth, but then in the end you join a couple of it is knit back and forth on the bias, and in the end you join a couple of the edges so that it becomes kind of a bandana style cowl that can be worn kind of as a, well, it can be worn as a cowl, so it's not, you don't have small ends that you're fiddling with, but it looks kind of like a bandana because it definitely has a triangular portion in the front. So this is what I've got so far, and I love the colors. I just love looking at this every time I pull it out, and I think I added one more pattern repeat since we last spoke, possibly two, but honestly, I'm not sure, because I didn't work on it much this week because I was like, oh, it's getting kind of wide now. Shouldn't I be thinking about the other end? The answer is not yet. I have 3 more repeats on the section that I'm on, and then I can start thinking about what it looks like on the other end. So, I need to knit these, and honestly, my goal would be, if I could finish this week, I really would like to. It's been on the needles for almost a month. There's no reason for that other than the fact that I've been getting distracted by other things, and so my goal is to finish this one this week. I have also been working on the blanket that I showed you last week, and so I've been blanketing and chickening. I'll talk about chickening in just a second, and knitting hats, and I really just want to finish this cowl. Of course, it is almost too warm for cowls, even though this is a fingering weight, so it could be worn as decorative for a little while longer, but it is almost too warm for cowls, so I really just need to finish this and move on. So that is my goal for this week. Hopefully next week I will be showing you a finished cowl. If I put it out there, maybe I'll actually do it. I'll just try and work on it every night this week, and that should get me to where I want to be. So the last thing I'm working on is a chicken, and it is primarily a white chicken. I go through this every so often when I talk to you. I work for a company called the City Girl Farm as a contract feather knitter for them. We create chicken sculptures out of various kinds of, well, not various kinds of, we create sculptures out of wool, and the two things that we do with that wool are we felt it or it gets spun and knit. I am not on the felting team. I am sometimes a spinner, but most of the time just a knitter, and so I am knitting parts of a chicken right now, and this week I'm going loopy, and it's white, but it's also got little bits of other colors in there. It's definitely got black, it's got some green, it's got some brown, and then every so often there are little bits of orange in there, so it's kind of fun. It's just a little bit of color, and I have a bunch more of this to do this week, so that is the other thing that I will be working on. So that is all the knitting. I was trying to think if I was going to have anything exciting for next month. My hope is that I'm going to finish the cowl. I don't know precisely what I'm going to cast on next. It is starting to be time to talk to my niece and nephew and see what kind of sweaters they would like for their birthdays this year. Their birthdays are both in October, and each year I try and knit them a new sweater. Last year I did not because I went with some other things that they were interested in, and they had a bunch of sweaters, but now I believe they've outgrown their sweaters, so it is time to start thinking about those. those. And honestly, I just need to have a phone call with them. I would like to ask them a few questions about what they would like. I would like to give them a choice between, say, a pullover and a cardigan. I would like to know what their favorite colors are, and if they have any other requests. I do not want to get into the minutia of it. I will definitely still be picking the sweaters, but the kids are going to be 11 and 8 this year, and I feel like having their buy-in and asking them what kind of a sweater they would like to wear is a really nice thing now that they have a little bit more autonomy, you know, and they're growing, and I feel like it will make them want to wear the sweaters for longer if I let them be a part of the process. So I need to do that so that I can get some stuff together for that and get started, because I'm going to be traveling some this year, and I want to get an early start so that I'm done in advance and not worried about it at the last minute and knitting in the car on the way. So, as I do sometimes for Thanksgiving. So, next up on the list, let me pull some of the last little bit of fiber. I am spinning some really fun fiber from Created by LCB. This is her tag. I showed you this last week, and actually I have gotten very far into it. I am working on the 3rd of 4 ounces, and I'm in the middle of it, and so then I just have the 4th of 4 ounces, and this is some really fun fiber. It is called Candy Mountain, which if you ever watched, gosh, I don't even remember what it was. It was a really bad webcomic. It was like, it was illustration. It wasn't, well, it might have been claymation. It was either claymation or illustration-mation. And all I remember is the unicorn going, "Let's go to Candy Mountain, Charlie. Let's go to Candy Mountain." And so this is Candy Mountain. So it is navy blue, and then it has some bright, almost highlighter colorways, and I have the first bobbin of it spun up. So this is the first bobbin, and I spun this in really small pieces, so lots of short repeats, and then I am spinning the other one in 2 sets of, I basically broke the remaining fiber I had in half, and so I had 2 of these that run through the colors just like this. So it goes from navy through to orange, green, well, it's got navy, sorry, and then it's a little bit of purple and burgundy through orange, green, blue, a little bit more purple. This is more like a dark purple as opposed to burgundy, and then pink, and I am spinning it all the way through, and so it will kind of subtly stripe as a fractal does, but it will also be nice and barber pole-y, and I was really impressed. I got through the first part in this first week, and then I am working on the second part, so I actually may be able to ply this weekend, which would be wonderful, and then I would have another skein to go up in the shop, and I've actually picked my next spin. I'm not going to show it to you today because I won't get to it this week, but I'm picking a combo spin next time. I'm going to use some fiber along with some silk, or some regular merino fiber along with some of the silk that I picked up at my spinning silk retreat, and my plan is to spin a 2-ply, which I think is going to be really cool, and then kind of coordinate together. I'll bring them next week so that I can show you. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is a little bit about what I'm doing on my quilting journey. I am in the middle of, well, 3/4 of the way done quilting that quilt. It's a big quilt. I've run into a few snafus, and I will share them when I share the finished quilt with you, because even though I'm finding them a little embarrassing and wishing I could fix them, I'm not really sure that I can fix it, and I also think it's important to let you know that I am absolutely not infallible and that I make my own mistakes, particularly when I'm learning a new to me craft. So this is the biggest quilt that I have tried to quilt on my home machine, and I believe that is partially the reason for some of the things I will talk about. My plan is to hopefully finish the quilt this week, get it bound next weekend, and then be able to talk to you about it. But I have lots of things in the plans. So the next thing that I'm turning my attention to is a challenge from the Modern Quilt Guild. And actually, I bought a really cool book this week and paged through it this weekend and read it and learned a little bit about it. And so now I am kind of brimming with ideas. So I thought I would just talk to you a little bit about it. So the Modern Quilt Guild, I am a member of the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild, which is a chapter of the national organization, the Modern Quilt Guild. They hold QuiltCon, which is a huge quilt convention of modern quilting. And it actually was just in February. That's actually when I went to that weekend was QuiltCon, and I went to my Quilt Non-retreat. That's when I went to the sewing retreat. And what they like to do is they like to give us quarterly challenges. And I have not participated before because, well, I guess they're not all quarterly challenges, because this one is kind of like running second into third quarter, or I guess running first into second quarter. They like to give us challenges to kind of explore quilting and get a little creative and try something we haven't tried before. And oftentimes the way they encourage that is they encourage people to do small quilts. So mini ones, like anywhere from about 12 to 24 inches square. And the idea is to explore a technique that you're not familiar with. And the technique that we're going to be working on this time is called negative space. And you may be familiar with the concept of negative space. Negative space is a photographic concept, but and kind of a concept in art. And basically the idea is that, like, if you are creating some kind of a painting or piece of art with a focal point, sometimes you will have that element as a focal point, and then you will have the background, and the background will sort of disappear, making it clear that like one element is supposed to be where you get the attention. And so the question is, like, how do you arrange your quilt so you have the background would be like the negative space, the space where there isn't anything, and the fact that there isn't anything or isn't much in that space draws your attention to something else in that space. So, excuse me. The best example I have of this, so, okay, this is called The Quilter's Negative Space Handbook. It is a book written by Sylvia Schaefer, and she is part of the Modern Quilt Guild, but she also, this was published by C&T Publishing, by a division called Stash Books. And so this is just a craft book that was available. I bought it off of her website. But this is a study into how to sort of explore negative space in your quilts. And honestly, the best one, the one that I think proves the point the best, well, there are two actually, so let me find it. I'm just going to I'm not going to show you all the construction, but I am going to show you the photos. So this is her Rainbow Sun quilt. So in this one, she's kind of actually inverted it, which is the white is the negative space, and the colors are all kind of the, well, so the white technically is the focal point, but it is kind of the negative space because there isn't a lot going on there. And then you've got all the color in the background that sort of makes this more prominent. And then what you can see is that she has actually done some quilting in that space to sort of bring out elements of the negative space and add something to it. But like in general, you know that this is your focal point here. The other one that I like, that's kind of the same, method suggestion is, hang on, I'm looking for it, is this one. So, and I can't remember, this is a design and I can't remember what it is called, but so this one is like the star on top of the dark stars. So it's the light star, which is your focal point, and the dark stars in the background. And then she doesn't have this quilted. This is just a diagram, but it actually is a quilt pattern that she has. And she's done some special quilting in there. So some of the other ways to do things are to, well, so the point of the book is sort of how to make use of negative space, how to design things so that you have negative space. And so, for instance, like she uses this is a painting by Vincent van Gogh. She uses the shoes as kind of an example. So the shoes are the focal point and the background is the bricks behind them. And there are details and shading in the bricks behind them, but you can definitely tell that like that is, it gives it texture and it kind of helps the shoes stand out. So that is kind of the project in itself, is what are you going to do with your negative space? What are you going to do with your focal piece? And I'll just show you a few other examples, because basically she's talking through design techniques and giving you instruction on how to make things happen. So one of them is like her Northern Lights quilt, where she takes these blocks, which are called New York beauty blocks, you know, and theoretically they'd be in circles, but she takes these blocks that are just like a quarter circle, and then she adds a lot of empty space around the rest of the quilt and kind of creates patterns and designs in them to emphasize those. And let me see, what are some of the other ones that I really like that she's done? There are a lot of really good. So this quilt, This quilt, she's got like a section of the quilt that has blocks and then the section of the quilt that doesn't have blocks, but look at how she's quilted that. You can sort of see that she has echoed the white lines that she has in the rest of the quilt on the quilting. So she's used the negative space to kind of build a pattern in there. So the argument with modern quilts is that they are not usually traditional block quilts. They have different proportions, they have different ideas, and so that's kind of what makes them more modern. And then the one on the cover is called River of Fire, and it's actually, it's 2 different block sizes and then arrangement of colors to sort of create interesting patterns. And then also she does lots of free motion quilting all over, but actually it really shows in the yellow because there's so little other design in there. So the idea is just sort of to take color and think about your lighter spaces, your darker spaces, your contrast, what is going to fade into the background, what is going to be brought to the front. So this is a really interesting book. It has lots of tips and tricks and more than I tried to show you kind of the finished project, so I wasn't showing off all the secret sauce. So this is what I am exploring next. I have a bunch of ideas. My plan for April is to make the quilt because I'm kind of trying to finish up what I want to do. And then my plan for April will be to make the quilt. And I don't know that I want to talk about what my plan is just yet. I think I want to do it and see how it comes out and then share it with you. And so the plan was to start thinking about negative space quilts last month and this month. In April, sew and make your negative space quilt. In May, we will be presenting them at the Guild. And then in June, there is actually a regional quilting conference, the Kansas City Regional Quilt Conference. It's going to be held here in Overland Park, which is a suburb of the Kansas City metropolitan area. And it is a regional quilt festival, and I believe we have 15 guilds participating. And the Kansas City Modern Quilt Guild is going to have exhibit space in the quilt show, and they would like to do an exhibit of a bunch of the quilts that come out of our negative space challenge. So we are highly encouraged to play with this, try this, see if we like it, and then maybe even display it at the show. And I actually have to say that my original idea for a quilt was actually, it was based on one of the quilts that I saw in this book. But what I wanted to do with it was I actually wanted to make it a bigger quilt. I wanted to make it like a wall quilt, and my thought was eventually I'd just keep it as a wall quilt for me. But we're limited to, it has to be 24 by 24. And I didn't want to make anything that small for my wall because I actually really like 36 by 36 or 40 by 40 for my wall. So I'm going to do something different for the little one. And then I might actually go on and try a second one in a slightly bigger one. So I'm very excited about that. That's what I'm working on. And that's what I will be bringing to show you in a little bit. So I know that's like a lot about quilting, and I know many of you are here for just the knitting and spinning. I'm hoping that I'm going to hit kind of all the topics. I have to say I'm in a knitting lull. I am knitting. I am enjoying knitting. I am trying to work through some things. I'm trying to work through my stash, and I'm trying to work through that blanket project. And I am almost halfway through on my on the main color of the yarn. I'm almost done with that third skein, which means I am almost halfway done with that blanket. And so I would really like to concentrate on that for one more month, which means I'm kind of at a lull in my knitting. I'm enjoying the cowl, but I'm not spending as much time on it. I have to say I'm a little excited about quilting. There's a lot for me to learn in quilting. Not that there's not things for me to learn in knitting, but I've been doing it for a while and there's a lot for me to learn in quilting, and I'm kind of excited by that. That said, the weather has started to get warmer, and so I'm starting to think about what tops and tees I might want to knit this summer, because I have discovered that I actually love and wear tops and tees quite a bit during the warmer months. And so I have several fingering weight bundles in stash that I think are going to become tees. So that is something you may see me cast on soon, along with I do need to kind of get going on the kids' sweaters. So that is a lot, but that is kind of what I'm up to. And my hope is that where I'm going with that is I hope that I will switch back to a little bit of a knitting focus, particularly for those of you who came for the knitting and are here for the knitting. So yeah, I think that's going to be it for this week. I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are crafting and enjoying things. I am spending a lot of time thinking about crafting, possibly more time thinking about it than actually doing it, which I would like to rectify. But I am also kind of enjoying this new exploration. I used to wake up in the middle of the night having knitting ideas like yarns to match with patterns or how I could solve a particular problem I was having. And now sometimes I wake up in the morning doing quilting math in my head because I've been dreaming about quilting and like how I can cut enough shapes out of the same yard of fabric and how I can add borders to things or what fabric I could pair with what. And it kind of amuses me. I'm also trying to work from my fabric stash, which, to be clear, I bought a bunch of stuff last month, but I am both of these challenge well, okay, that's not entirely true. I did order a yard of fabric. Most of the challenge quilting that I'm going to be doing from stash. So I did order 1 yard of fabric that I really, really wanted to order for my original idea, which will now be the second quilt. But everything else, the backing, the batting, the thread, like all of that I have in my stash. And actually I'm going to be using a charm pack on my one of my challenge quilts that I've had in the stash for a while. So it is one of the first things that I got. So yeah, so that is what I'm up to. I hope that you are doing well, and I will wish you all the very best in your crafting journeys this week, to knitting, to spinning, to sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.